before we really get into things, I just want to say a few words about WBU. WBU is a community organization that advances women, girls, and gender-expansive people directly impacted by carceral systems. And we focus on supporting grassroots groups in the movement. Our priorities are mental and physical well-being, building economic power, changing narratives, and building community. And we do this by providing resources in the forms of a couple of different things: space and place to our community, grant making, and building the well-being and capacity of our core community. Most importantly, really, people, we are stewards of these assets for our core community. That's what we're here for, and we're informed by their voice. So, in alignment with these priorities, I can't tell you how excited we are to be co-hosting this event, because the solidarity economy is central to basically everything that you would want to think about moving away from the oppressive forces that we know that are plaguing us. I don't have to tell you, racism and incarceration and alienation and all the exclusions of the reentry process are devastating to people. And it's just a fight for everything that people need to live. So I really do believe, and maybe you do too, that working cooperatively is an opportunity to work together and be a whole human being. These things are also informed by real structures that you're going to hear about this evening from people who have done brilliant work and just are out there with the people. And so I'm really excited to just kind of get to that point. So let me introduce you to a few of the people that are sitting here tonight. Many of you may have first learned about the liberatory possibilities of the solidarity economy through Cooperation Jackson in Mississippi. Yeah, please, give it up, give it up. And so we are fortunate to have its co-founder and co-director, Kali Akuno, here. Yeah, and I'm going to say a few words about Kali. He is, yes, I said it, the co-founder and co-director of Cooperation Jackson. He has served as the director of special projects and external funding in the mayoral administration of the late Chokwe Lumumba in Jackson, Mississippi. His focus in this role was supporting cooperative development, the introduction of eco-friendly and carbon reduction methods of operation, and the promotion of human rights and international relations for the city. And don't we miss that now. To Kali Akuno's right, thank you, is David Cobb. And many of you, please feel free to applaud. David is the host of the popular podcast, Redneck Gone Green, and he's dubbed a people's lawyer, and he spent his career litigating corporate polluters and civil rights violators. He was the Green Party presidential nominee in 2004 and forced a recount in Ohio that helped launch the election integrity movement. In 2010, he co-founded Move to Amend, a campaign for a constitutional amendment to abolish the illegitimate court-created doctrines of corporate constitutional rights and money equals speech. And in 2016, he served as the campaign manager for Jill Stein's presidential campaign. Currently, he serves as the co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network and the People's Network for Land and Liberation, a consortium which seeks to decommodify the land to reestablish a right relationship with the earth and all of our relatives and relations. And I'm going to move to Camille, and we're going to be joined by someone shortly, but Camille deserves a long period of time to be able to introduce. Boy, we are lucky to have Camille, who's also come in from far away. Camille's a co-founder of Chai Fresh Kitchen, a worker cooperative food service contracting business founded, owned, and run primarily by formerly incarcerated women living in the south and west sides of Chicago. Yes. Yeah. So great. She is currently a non-voting shareholder and management consultant for Chai Fresh. She has a law degree from the University of Cincinnati College of Law where she was awarded a Human Rights Fellowship and graduated cum laude. She served as the Associate Director of the ICA Group, was a consultant of Upside Down Consulting, the Director of Field Building at the Democracy at Work Institute, and the Director of Research at the National Center for Employee Ownership. Camille has dedicated her life to working to build a democratic economy in service to the U.S. social justice movements organizations, whose mission is advancing Black liberation, immigrants' rights, food justice, and the U.S. labor movement. And these are, what else could you ask for, folks? She specializes in cooperative startup development, managing complex worker-centered initiatives, supporting existing businesses to become worker-owned, as well as policy advocacy and drafting. Camille is also a board member of Shared Capital Cooperative, Urban Growers Collective, E.G. Wood, Obram Collective, and the Interaction Institute for Social Change. She is a steering committee She is a steering... these things need to be out here. I mean, you've got an incredible... this is a person who's given her life to the cooperative movement. You know what I mean? She is a steering committee even if I butcher it. She is a steering committee member for the Cooperative Professionals Guild, a member of the Council of Cooperative Economists, and advisor for Certified Employee Owned. So it's true, there are a lot of things that this person has done. You'll hear more about what they're doing at Chai Fresh. And so, forgive me, I'm getting ready to lose my voice. There are also some things that happen after this panel that I want to raise up before I step away. We are going to have breakouts, and we're going to have opportunities for conversations with people here, and also with some of the local cooperatives that I would love to raise up that are very important. One of them is called Brooklyn Packers. Yeah. And Brooklyn Packers is a Black-led, worker-owned food sourcing, packing, and distribution cooperative in Brooklyn, New York. Founded in 2016, they connect local communities with food from small, sustainable farms, with a preference for those owned by people of color, women, and the LGBTQ+ community. They guarantee worker owners the same salary and equal company voting rights and facilitate access to food through sliding scale pricing. And so, folks, if you want to give it up, I'm happy to hear you do it. And then, very near and dear to us here, but also because they've been stalwarts in this movement, is Maharlika Cleaning Cooperative. Yay! Yes, and we love them not only because they are remarkable, but because they work with us, and we know them and we love them. But I'm going to tell you a little bit, thank you, Rebecca, about what their work is about. Maharlika is the first worker cooperative of Filipina domestic workers in the U.S., predominantly human trafficking survivors. Maharlika organized as an office cleaning cooperative because they knew, through this model, they could create a business that contributes to their vision of a just and equitable society where everyone is loving towards themselves and others, where we have freedom of movement and expression, and where we liberated from forced labor and family separation. Their mission is to create sustainable, just, and healthy workplaces for their community, clients, and cooperative members. So, okay, I'm almost there, folks. Because this really was a cooperative effort, and you need to tell people who's out here. This was a very big undertaking, and in addition to the folks that you've heard about, I want to mention that this gathering was supported by Jason Butler and the team from Professor Richard Wolff's Democracy at Work, and this is how we're going to be seeing this in posterity and a lot of other things, and the Left Forum, and Rebecca Lurie and Abby Harper at CUNY's Community and Worker Ownership Project. Thank you, God, for Rebecca and everyone there. People work really, really hard. And I just want to say that CWOP is centered on teaching and promoting worker-owned cooperatives, economic democracy, and community engagement to broaden action and study for deepening a solidarity economy. And so really, that's pretty much it for me, everybody.
I've been kind of tasked with setting in part kind of an overview. And I'm trying to figure out a way to do that very succinctly. And I'm challenged with it. And let me say why based upon our own history. So it's been, and I'll start with personal statements. It's been my personal assessment since the year 2000, really since 1999, around that period, that the fascism that we are now openly experiencing was going to come, right? And what drew me to that conclusion were a whole set of things that I won't recount from the 90s, where I was witness to the new right organizing and out-organizing us significantly, right? And seeing them gain traction, throughout the years. But what really brought it home that shaped up my thinking on that was being in Philadelphia trying to protest the RNC. This was before George Bush II stole the election, right? And mind you, if some of us have forgotten that that was a stolen election, not that any of them have ever been fair or truly democratic, but that one had a particular character to it, and that convention had a particular fascistic tone to it that if you were there, you would never forget, right? That they were very clear that if it took taking tanks to roll in the street to take the election, that they were willing to do that. That was 25 years ago, right? And they now want to act as if they didn't set a tone and a precedent and the legal structures and arguments for what is now taking place, right? They fundamentally did. So I'm one of these people, I've been clocking this ever since. And what that led me to in the course of kind of my life, I was a public school educator for a little more than a decade in California. And I embarked on this crazy journey to try to start a public high school based upon a policy that we use in Oakland, California that was originally stolen from here out of New York. New York, y'all used to have this new small autonomous schools kind of policy and orientation. Oakland tried to borrow that and did for a brief period of time. And what they gave us initially was kind of like the best of both worlds. Like all our teachers, myself, we were all remained part of the teachers union, remained part of the district, not a charter, which is a semi-private institution. We weren't going that route, but it gave us the flexibility of creating our own curriculum, creating our own schedule, and hiring our own staff, right? And everybody retained all their rights. So it was kind of like the best of a multiple set of worlds of how they got implemented. And so in terms of doing that work and building that school, I was hit with a major personal crisis one night. I think it was like 2 or 3 nights before the school was set to open. This was in 2002. And it just hit me. I'm recruiting all these Black and Latino students and there are no jobs for them. So what am I actually preparing them to do? And am I lying to them or am I lying to their parents and I'm lying to myself and the community? And that was a real dilemma. And I didn't have an answer. And it was in the pursuit of trying to find an answer that I went back to exploring cooperatives and the solidarity economy, right? And so the marriage of these two things is really, at least for my own personal journey, is kind of what led to Cooperation Jackson being born. That and another pit stop in New Orleans around Hurricane Katrina and being very clear what the United States government was prepared to do and did do to Black, poor people and other poor people, right? That they would leave us to, just to die, to starve, and to ship us out. And they did that in full view of everybody, and very little protests or restructuring happened. So all that to say, we then, in the direct development of Cooperation Jackson, tried to develop a program that could withstand a fascist onslaught. That is literally when you see kind of what we tried to do. It hasn't often been publicly stated that way, but I think anybody who's who knows me and has been following my work and our collective work know there's the undertone of we're not just for food sovereignty just because we want, high quality food. That's one part of it. I want food sovereignty, and I'm fighting for food sovereignty because I know they will starve us to death if they get the opportunity to. Right? And so there's a deep political objective tied to a long-term strategy of around liberation. So when you look at us, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit because of the time, when you look at our history and program in our context in Jackson, despite its ups and downs, its shortcomings, we are far from being food autonomous. We are far from being a fully self-determined community or project, right? It takes a lot more to dislodge U.S. capitalism and imperialism than a couple of ragtag folks building cooperatives in Jackson, Mississippi, just to be clear.
Why you calling us out like that?
I'm ragtag as they come, so I'm talking about myself right now. But setting the tone, setting the agenda, and trying to set a model, that's what we have been trying to do and will continue to try to do. But we've always been very clear, despite however good we do in Jackson, if we can't build and federate and have other areas replicate some of what we do in your own fashion under your own conditions, then we could just be easily isolated and crushed, right? So we're not doing what we're doing to just be a good model. We want to federate with all of you to build a different world. And that takes a level of coordination and planning and foresight. And to that end, it was off the experience of, that I shared with many of you in this room, actually, of during the pandemic, we had this wild notion in Cooperation Jackson that we should put forth an effort in the midst of this pandemic to raise some highfalutin demands and move folks towards trying to organize a general strike. And we were ambitious, as that sounds crazy, believe me, knowing that trying to pull off a general strike in this country is far from a notion, but we were like, the hell with it, under the terms and conditions, let's give it a shot. That shot was called the People's Strike. And it made a few advances, I think, learned a lot of lessons, some of which I think we still need to impart, summarize, and put out there. But it was in kind of the fallback position of watching, let me put it in context what I mean. If y'all remember, in January and February and March, that was a real conversation about universal health care that was happening in this country. A large part of it was associated with Bernie's second run at president. But, through the work of DSA and other forces, the nurses, unions, et cetera, there was a legitimate campaign. And then the pandemic hit. And you would think in the midst of a global pandemic, that was a demand that could have easily been met. Instead, a year later, we saw the right win that argument about, there should be no mask and no shutdown and anybody who was sick should just die. Right? And we watched that flip. And we watched that flip in part because we couldn't move enough of our own forces, particularly the middle forces, to take any kind of bold militant action, right? Due to lack of kind of preparation, I'll call it that. And so for us, this being Cooperation Jackson, we started doing our own internal assessment of saying we knew it was premature, but we didn't know how premature it was, and that we needed to take a step back and build a little bit more slowly. And from that, we started reaching out to folks who shared at that time some similar programmatic focus and politics to us. And that was the initial impetus for the development of People's Network for Land and Liberation. And what we wanted to really just start, not to create, something that was just exclusive or anything of that nature, but we were looking for folks who had some common ground in believing in decolonization and it was a decommodification and decolonization of land. That was number one. Number two, folks who were engaged in cooperative development, right? Either having co-ops or seeking to do them, or at various stages of them being developed. Three, being open to engage in what we call community production, right? And then 4, folks that were looking to federate. And that was the criteria grew and expanded, but when we first put that out, that was the first thing. And so I know a lot of folks have been, well, why not look at this group? It's like we were looking for folks who were doing all those at the same time. And that's very rare. And it's very hard to do. Trust me, in trying to do it now for the last 12 years, some pieces of what we do are far more developed than others, not for lack of energy or trying or attempt. But y'all know working with each other is hard, right? It ain't easy to pull people together and try to do some things democratically when we have not been trained to be democratic subjects. So it's more than just a notion, and it takes some time. But that was the initial impetus and of why we wanted to do this. And over the course of the last 5 years, we built a little something with the People's Network for Land and Liberation, right? It's still young, it's still incipient, but it's now got 6 nodes that David will talk about. And we want to kind of put this out to the broad movement as kind of an offering of things that we think can and should be combined to create a more transformative world. And trust me, the last point I want to end on is that we need it. We need it desperately, because it is not by accident that the richest men in the world, who are all tech owners, are major sponsors of this particular fascist regime. That is not by accident, by any stretch of the imagination. We are now entering into, I would argue, a new phase, and different people have different names for it. I don't think it's a fully settled question. The term that I like the most is techno-feudalism, right? I don't agree with all of Giannis's points, but that's besides the point. Is that the clear point is something is changing, and has been changing, and it's changing before our very eyes. The economy does not function or work in the way that it used to, even in the course of our own lifetimes. And they control and dictate a large part of what we all are subject to and are experiencing now, and we have to find effective ways to fight them. I would argue that cooperatives and the solidarity economy are some of the sharpest tools in our toolkit, and that is why we are here, hopefully, to have a deeper conversation on how do we develop these to be an effective tool, not only to fight back, but to win, because I want to win. I don't just want to fight back. I want to win. So I'm going to stop there, leave it open to questions and answers, and turn it over to David. Thank y'all.
Y'all, so my name is David Cobb. I am a lawyer by training. I've sued corporate polluters. I've lobbied elected officials. I have run for office myself. I ran for Attorney General in the state of Texas, where I pledged, if elected, to use that office to revoke the charters of corporations that were routinely violating health, safety, and environmental protection laws. I did run for President of the United States on the Green Party ticket, and I've been arrested for nonviolent civil disobedience on a number of occasions. Yeah, I'm always in the right crowd when that's the applause line, right? I did all this stuff, but I've been arrested, and I'm here to tell y'all, I've been to jail for justice. I'm willing to go again, but I don't want to. Like my comrade, I want to win a revolution. And I am not going to back down in this fascist moment. I'm going to double down, and I'm going to tell y'all that we are in a moment. This moment is one that we have to win. It's not enough, look at here, I study history, I study movements, but not so I can be a good movement Trivial Pursuit player. I'm studying this because I'm trying to understand in this historic moment, in this conjuncture, where can we make advances? And I'm going to posit, I'm going to put to you with as much kindness but also seriousness, we can be making advances now if we unite and fight the right. We could win. We can win. And I'm going to say this. Yes, I currently serve as the co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. I also want to tell on myself and tell you this. The U.S. Solidarity Economy Network was birthed in Atlanta, Georgia at the U.S. Social Forum in 2007. Rob? That's right. Melanie? I've got many comrades who were there. I'm going to tell on myself, y'all. The U.S. Social Forum was birthed there one of our mentors and dear friends, Jerome Scott, brought me into that process. I did a radical democracy track. Emily Coano and others put together this social or this solidarity economy track, and I went to it, and I said, that's all well and good. Those are co-ops. I am a serious revolutionary. See, I'm telling myself, right? And I'm just saying, but now I am the co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network because I have drank the Kool-Aid, because I have come to understand through my dear friend, my brother, my comrade, Kali Akuno, and the work at Cooperation Jackson, it's not just about co-ops. It's not even just about governing a place, as it is about transforming both the place and the relationship between human beings, our own labor, and how we actually create the society. I am all in, is how we say it where I'm from. So, yeah, you can applaud that line. I am all in on the solidarity economy framework. And some people tell me that David, stop talking about capitalism because it's too hard to understand. Y'all, I've gone to elementary schools and I can explain to what capitalism is. I can go to any pool hall or bowling alley and get into a conversation with any working class person about how the boss man's got his boot on our neck and how he's screwing us over. I guarantee it, right? Capitalism is actually easy to understand. It means the private ownership of the means of production, and by that we just mean the factories, the ranches, the things that are used to create the thing. So private ownership, number one. Number two, that you are commodifying things. In other words, you produce things that you can then sell for a profit. That's as opposed to how human beings have done it for 95% of the time that we've been on planet Earth, which is that you produce things for human use. So I'm here to tell you, we have got to address very clearly why we are doing commerce itself. That's called social reproduction, by the way, the things that you have to do to reproduce society. And isn't it interesting that the single most important thing that happens in social reproduction is the birth of children and raising them, and somehow in capitalism that has become so gendered and has become, quote, women's work that doesn't even get paid. Somebody should look into that. The point is, when you have the private ownership of the means of production, when goods and services are produced for profit maximization, as opposed for just what human beings need and what the rest of life itself needs, then add number three, that labor itself is merely just one more commodity. I'm here to tell you, labor is noble. It means the meaningful, productive use of human activity. We should celebrate that. People want to work. What they don't want is a job where they're getting pushed about, bossed about, and having our surplus value extracted by these bastards, right? Fourth, that the idea is that all of this is going to be facilitated by the market. So you put that all together, my friends, and what you have is the ideology of the cancer cell. What you have is a system that is fundamentally based on extraction, exploitation, and we know what happens with cancer. It is either cured or it kills the host. I am here to tell you there is simply no way to, quote, reform or tame capitalism. If we actually are serious about an ecologically sustainable, racially and socially just society, we have to either be anti-capitalist or post-capitalist. I'm willing to debate whether it's anti or post. I am not prepared to give up on we have to accept capitalism. We do not. We do not. So, the solidarity economy is quite simple. The idea is that we are committed to a pluralistic approach. There are many ways to get there, but we have to be committed to another world, a return to the indigenous world. And every single one of us, me and you, whoever, and by you I mean whoever is occupying the seat that your butt is attached to now, you descend from indigenous stock. Every single one of us do. Every single one of us, if we go back far enough, we'll find ancestors that were living in right relation with each other and with Mother Earth, and were engaged in a reciprocal dance of life and understood the appropriate role. Now, some folks, our indigenous siblings, are closer to that. Some of us, like myself, I know because of my mama and the work that she's done, I descend from the Scottish and the Irish on my mama's side of the family. One of the reasons I have a particular hatred of the English Empire, by the way. Not English people, the English Empire. Empire gonna empire. All empires suck. Period, full stop. What I'm saying is that this notion of what we're talking about is, got it. The People's Network for Land and Liberation is a way to take that analysis that I just described and say, how are we going to actually create that new world? And it goes like this. Decommodify land for both food production and distribution, and also the practice of traditional ecological knowledge. Number 2, incubate worker-owned co-ops, but I'm going to say it plainly and simply, not merely co-ops for the sake of co-ops, but so that we are literally learning how to make and implement and create, make decisions democratically, but also create goods and services that actually have value to people within this current system. Number 3, the creation of community production centers using digital fabrication. I'm not waiting to seize the means of production. I want to create the means of production using this new technology to democratize it. If we don't blow up this planet, y'all, we are within 10 years of some version of Star Trek replicators. And imagine for a moment that we have community production centers where we have democratized that technology and we're creating those things for us. Number 4, political education. We cannot shy away from it. Politics in command. Some of you will know that phrase, but at the end of the day, it is easier for people to act their way into a new way of thinking than to think your way into a new way of acting. So we've got to actually, with our hands, like Michelle Vassell, WIAT Tribal Administrator taught me, we are praying with our hands. With our intentionality, those are the prayers that we're lifting up. The 5th thing, art and culture. Because culture is everything that we do and how we do it. And art can transcend everything that we do. How am I doing? Got 15 minutes? 15, I got 5.
I thought it was 10.
Because it gives me a chance to lift up one of my great mentors. Her name is Bella. I was sitting with a group. We were talking about like what the plan was and what human needs were. And I said, well, as a revolutionary myself, I know certain things. I think I'm a pretty good organizer. But, what we really need is art, because without art in the movement, we can't really move it. And I said, so I'm an organizer. I'm not really an artist. And Bella, who was coloring on the floor, 5-year-old Bella, did not miss a beat and said, everyone's an artist, David. The room went silent. Everybody looked at each other. So I always like to lift up my mentor, Bella, who reminds me that I too am an artist, but the art that I do is as a storyteller and as a cheerleader. And I hope that I have inspired you that we can do this. So the People's Network for Land and Liberation is 6 groups across the country who are actually putting all of those 5 things best we can into practice. We want to offer that as an example. We want to engage and work with you. I want to be clear, we are not yet at the point where we think we can add new nodes to the People's Network for Land and Liberation, but we want to share with you the recipe that we have. We do think that we have a special sauce, but it ain't a secret sauce. We are going to give our recipe away, unlike my mama and her biscuit recipe. We give our recipe away, and in the Caribbean, y'all will probably use a little bit of different spices, wouldn't you? Fatula, right? For those of you in the South, you might turn it into a roux. Those of you from Ireland might turn it into a stew. What we're saying is make it your own, but those 5 points, we believe if we learn how to actually do that, we can create liberated zones, right? That we are going to have to defend, but those liberated zones then create supply chains like rhizomes or mycelial networks. Those supply chains become value chains. We recreate the indigenous trade routes we think that we can ultimately build ourselves the spaces that we're going to need to actually take on the predatory class. I'm going to end it with this. I don't know of a single time that the predatory class have said, oh, wow, these folks have finally learned how to work together. Here are the keys. We're going to have to fight these folks. We are not prepared yet. But if we learn to work together, if we learn how to provision ourselves, to feed each other, to house each other, to take care of each other, to protect each other. Shout out to Chicago, where people are protecting each other against this fascist government. You know how you get stronger? You exercise. You exercise your civil muscle. You exercise your own agency and capacity. We have to create little d Democrats, not Democratic Party. I mean, we have to change how we think. We have to empower ourselves to believe that we can win, and I know we can. Peace.
All right, we're going to swap up the order on you a little bit, give you time to settle in. Camille, her, she, or they pronouns are great. I stand on shoulders. All of our work is inspired by what we read, what we were learning about Cooperation Jackson, Jessica Gordon-Nemhart's work. So I'm going to just spend my time telling you a story. Actually, keep me accountable too. Appreciate it. So I'm going to spend my time telling you a story that starts in 2018 when, after reading Jessica Gordon-Nemhart's book and Kali's book, and seeing the potential for cooperatives to be a force for Black liberation, wanting to see that come into existence, not as concepts that we're seeing in one place or another, but just transforming my work. As you heard from my story, I was working in a bunch of cooperative development organizations nationwide. Democracy at Work Institute, ICA Group, the National Center for Employee Ownership. And I was telling people about how important cooperatives were and why they were important. My hands weren't dirty yet. I didn't know how to start a cooperative. I had never been in deep relationship with other cooperators. I hadn't felt the pain and the joy of building a co-op, but I was talking about it. And I was like, this is the wrong order. I've got to just let go. So let go of the jobs, move to Chicago, and just while having whatever work my former employers, my former co-op developers would give me, using the rest of our time to just start thinking about what it would mean to build a worker co-op owned, governed, driven by formerly incarcerated women, what that would look like in real life. Knew I could not do that alone. Knew that that was not a solo venture, that was a village venture. Brought in someone who I'd worked with on a few different projects, Joan Fadiero and Angie, organizers in Chicago. Chicago, if you don't know, I was just moving there. I'm a Californian at heart. I was moving to Chicago, but organizing is the heartbeat of Chicago, right? I needed to get organizers that were part of BYP 100, that were part of all the beautiful organizing work that was there to help inform what this needed to look like. And they identified formerly incarcerated women who were interested in this concept and who were already leaders in their community, new people in their community. And so we brought them in as the advisory board. And when I say we're starting from scratch, we were literally starting from, I wonder what kind of business we should start. We looked at the full list of NAICS codes, do you know what that is? Like the national, North American, like all of the codes, and we were like, well, not mining, right? So we just we're literally checking off all of the ones that didn't feel like it could be a fit for what we wanted to do, and we had some left. And the ones that rose to the top after we had some left were laundry, and we wanted good jobs. We wanted to be able to grow. We wanted to have our own space, so we weren't sending people off to other people's houses, right? We wanted to have our space, right? And we ended up with laundry, food service contracting, and logistics. Is what we came to as some possibilities, right? We brought it to the advisory boards, formerly incarcerated women, people who had been on the inside. They're like, take laundry off the list immediately and never put it back. And I was like, it's y'all's. You don't want laundry, because they have to do laundry so much inside. They were like, we're not coming out here to do sheets. Like, that's not how this is going to work, all right? But a lot of them already had food background. That's one of the easier entryways for people. And I happened to have a client in Boston called City Fresh Foods, and they were already doing food service contracting. So I actually just bartered with them. Hey, if I set up your employee ownership plan for you, will you tell us how to start a food service contracting organization? And so we swapped. I was like, send us your menu so we can, just asking for their intellectual property in return for, all of that national employee ownership knowledge that I had built over the years. And so with this kind of blueprint of a business, which is, they're now a $20 million business. They have one of the largest contracts that a Black-owned company has with the city of Boston. I think maybe the largest contract, because they're in BPS, they're in Boston Public Schools. And so they exchanged their intellectual property, and we were like, we still didn't know what we were doing, right? I'd never started a kitchen, but our advisors helped recruit formerly incarcerated women who'd recently come out and were interested in being the founding members. So December 2019, the first time we meet with the members, and we're like, we have this idea. It's a food service business. You would own it. We would help you run it. You wouldn't ever be alone. And they were into it. Only 5 people showed up, and all 5 of them were into it. And so we were like, all right. We started meeting weekly, just being like, okay, let's figure out what this looks like. We had pizza at every meeting. They got paid $20 an hour at every meeting. Critical part of how you do that. And then, this is, December 2019, March 2020, we register the business. And our members say, we were like, oh, we'll probably get this started in July. And they're like, no, we start now, because I can't get unemployment because last time I did something, so I have no income and I have rent. And I'm going to tap out on these rent programs real quick, and I'm going to have nowhere to stay. And so they're like, start it now. And we're like, okay, let's do a quick GoFundMe campaign, raise a few dollars, enough to, secure a local shared kitchen spot and put out some meals, get a license, do all that bureaucratic stuff. And we put our first meals out May 13th, 2020. Shy Fresh, because of COVID, there were programs in place that were about feeding the community. Those programs saw the authenticity of what we were trying to build. And so they were like, all right, if we're going to get money to give food out, we want to give it to you. If you're going to be cooperative, right, with your work, if you're trying to build infrastructure for us to own our own food system, let's give it to you. So we got in our first year, $450,000 worth of contracts, all around emergency feeding. In our second year, I was scared because we were going from this kind of friendly on-ramp of emergency feeding, no requirements for exactly how the food needed to be, just make some food, make sure it's safe, get it to the community, into the market. The real U.S. capitalist market is what we had to break into, right? And for 2 months, we didn't have anything. And I'm sitting there watching the payroll go out and nothing come in. And it was scary. And I hired somebody with an MBA who had no idea how to get us contracts. That degree does not teach you how to break into the market, right? But we had a strategy of relationality. We talked to everybody about what our vision was for food sovereignty. And that got to somebody, and that got to somebody, and that got to somebody. And we got a daycare center, 600 meals a day, every day, actually for 2 meals, so 1,200 meals a day. We went from just doing meals however we wanted to then being compliant with federal regulations. That was a harsh transition. We're still working out of a 400 square foot kitchen at this point, right? And so we get this bigger contract and we're like, all right, we need our own space. And we go looking around. We were actually going to split a building with Blue Tin Cooperative, another cooperative in Chicago that was getting started. But our members were like, they're sewing. We're making food. We're having our own space and it's going to be a kitchen. And I was like, you're right. I'm all for cooperation, but you're right. So we found a kitchen. We bought it in December 2020 $400,000. You know, it used to be a corner grocery. It had closed time after time because small grocery is a really hard business model, right? And so we're like, oh, let's take that building and let's rehab it. I was told by my architect at the time it would be a $400,000 renovation. How much was the renovation, y'all? $1.6 million. I was like, I can raise $400,000. I've done $400,000 when I'm at ICA Group. When I'm like, I can raise $400,000. $1.6 million, y'all. But it is COVID, right? And there's resources from ARPA that nobody's seen before, right? And there's philanthropy coming in at a higher level saying this is a different time. We need to move differently. So we got lucky. We had to beg a little. We had to beg a lot. But we got lucky, we filled that gap, and we purchased a building. And now we're in a brand new building. We have an anchor client. We're starting to think about home-delivered meals as well. We have, the 5 founding members. Shy Fresh is now about 14 people, and more members are coming on. But we get into this beautiful new building that we've just spent $1.6 million rehabbing, and the members look at me and they say, I'm in this beautiful building during work, and I can't find a place that doesn't have roaches to sleep in. And so they're like, we need housing. And I'm like, I'm not exactly a housing person. Like I've been a worker co-op person my whole journey, right? Like that's not really me. And they're like, but we need housing. So I don't know what you're going to do about it, but you're going to do something about it. Perfect. And so we buy a housing building. There's a co-op in Chicago that wants to transition, that realizes it's being a force for gentrification and wants to stay a co-op. We got lucky, purchased our first building, right? So now we have 3 housing units, a kitchen, and 1 worker co-op and a housing co-op. All right, fast forward now, since I only have 5 minutes, we have a second housing building, so 9 units total. We're building 2 new worker cooperatives. Shy Fresh is a $2 million building, a $2 million business, so it does $2 million in revenue every year. It does not need grants. It's sustainable on its own now. Shy Fresh is sustainable. The housing is sustainable on its own now. It does not need grants. The only thing we need grants for at this moment is to build new co-ops. Everything else, our 2 flagship organizations, are now sustainable. And I want you to take that message to anybody who is hesitant about funding, because it is sustainable long-term, this work, as long as you get it going correctly. We got really lucky this whole journey, and we made big mistakes along the way. It is very difficult to build cooperatives. Is that my song right there?
No, that's supposed to get the chickens in.
I have one of those. I should turn that off, actually. I have a chicken one. I have a chicken alarm, too. But yeah, so now we are building a food production business and a property management, maybe as well as construction business. We own an office for our cooperative work. We just got a second office that we're going to make community owned, and they're going to decide what goes in there. And we are buying a building for the food manufacturing business. So we have 6 buildings now that we own, a village of about 30 people, all formerly incarcerated, primarily women, that are our village. But we have a lot of open questions still, because in the framework that you all are talking about, decommodification, our lens on that isn't strong. And our members are not necessarily bought into, a revolutionary future either. So our political education aspects, we have a lot of questions we want to talk about, but also our work is innately radical, right? What we're doing is innately radical, and we're trying to balance never being paternalistic with having this liberatory future that we're building towards. And this is a room where we always want advice, where we want to hear how do we kind of continue to build that balance out, where we're continuing to build something that's towards the win that we all want, the actual win, and manage to do so in a framework that's, we're taking money from philanthropy. We're taking money from JP Morgan Chase. We're taking money from folks who don't have the same vision as us, right? So these are big questions. And then I think we as a community need to figure out how the revolution is funded, if that's not how it is, and how we continue to do this work towards that win. So thank you all for the time.
Hey everybody, it's me again. I just really wanted to introduce, we're so happy that she was able to make it. There were a lot of twists and turns. But we have Maria Garcia here from CEANYC. This is the Cooperative Economics Alliance of New York City. And I just want to share very briefly who Maria is and what CEANYC is. So Maria Garcia is a geography PhD candidate at Rutgers University and an Andean feminist critical geographer and educator. And just a word about CEANYC. It was formed in 2015 to strengthen and expand the solidarity economy movement, and they forge a shared strategy and identity across community-led, democratically controlled initiatives across New York City. So I just want to bring up Maria Garcia.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, and I am sorry I arrived so frazzled and late, but traversing from the Bronx to Brooklyn. Along the way, a lot of things happen. But it's so good to see you all. I see familiar faces, and I'm so happy that we're here. First of all, let's give it up for yourselves for being here on a Saturday evening, nerding out about this and together. And hello, my co-panelists. Hi. I guess you have heard from these incredible people doing the work already. A lot of the things I'm pretty sure are resonating with you. And at the Cooperative Economics Alliance of New York City, we, in the past decade, have been looking at what is the solidarity economy in New York City, right? And so if you want to get a peek at what we have started to map, you can go to our map that is City in Solidarity. I don't know if people have heard about it. Can you raise your hand if you have ever heard about this map that CEANYC created? Awesome. And you can look it up online. But there we have been mapping what we call the 8 sectors of the solidarity economy, because I think that to be able to do this interconnectedness that we are looking for to return the economy to the hands of our people, we need to look around us and our neighborhoods, and we need to recognize what are the efforts that are happening and celebrate them, but really push ourselves and each other. And more than push, I would say like inspire ourselves and others to really dedicate our energy to figure it out how we're going to feed, house, and have dignified labor for our people around us. Who has heard about the term solidarity economy before? Raise your hand. Okay, so we are all in tune with this, right? I was in a conversation the other day, and people were telling me that, oh yeah, no, these words are not accessible. And I was like, I actually disagree so much, because we all need to create our own language. This is actually not new, the fact that we live within the empire and that the walls that are built to the outside doesn't impede us to be in touch with the rest of the world. With South America, Central America has had this concept in their policy plans, in their anything that other small countries do is linked to the solidarity economy. And so when people were telling me, we don't know this language or these languages very foreign to our people, I always say, well, remember when we didn't have Google Maps? Remember when we didn't have Instagram? Everybody learned real quick. That shit is not accessible. You gotta have a smartphone, you gotta learn how to create a password, all of that shit is not accessible. So please, let's just consider that our creativity and the ability that we have to create languages and words and our own ways of naming things are innate to us. And so what we do at CEANYC, as I was saying, we're trying to connect very locally. We're going from, and I appreciate this meeting because we are talking about initiatives in the South. We're talking about the national initiative in Chicago, one of the largest cities of the United States. And so I think, if we think about the solidarity economy and how we're going to interconnect what we do, we have to be jumping from the global, the national, and the hyper-local at all times, right? And so I think that we have that ability in our communities, especially in New York City, because we have so many different experiences that come together. And so I just want to affirm that although there is that beautiful diversity, there is this incredible ability in New York City to build, to organize, we need to really coordinate with each other. Like we really need to figure it out how we're going to do that. And so I invite you to look at this map. I invite you to go and learn how many HDFCs are in your neighborhood, how many community gardens are in your neighborhoods. And as I enumerate this, I'm enumerating the solidarity economy sectors, right? I'm enumerating cooperative housing or limited equity housing, community gardens, CSAs that are community-supported agriculture, and I'm guessing that you all are familiar already with this sort of grouping of what we consider the practices of the solidarity economy. But more than that, more than knowing the names, what I am also hearing from my co-panelists is that one of the things that is going to help us to move towards this interdependence and interconnectedness as we swim around capitalism, as everything around us is capitalistic, is our principles and our values, right? Committed to not only economic and social justice and racial justice, but also sustainability, as people were saying, also liberating the land, also educating ourselves at the same time. So we have a huge task ahead of us, but we believe that in New York City, the connections that we can make with at a very hyper-local level have infinite possibilities. And taking from what David was saying about creating an alternative supply, like the capitalist supply chain is not working for us. We agree on that, don't we? Yeah. So we have proven that that's not working in our favor, and we have this technology of solidarity available to us to create a value chain, which is creating value for our people with our labor, with our creativity and solidarity, and thinking about how are we going to feed, house, and give our people dignified jobs and apply our creativity to solve these huge problems, is what we need to be thinking about, right? So again, at CEANYC, we have several programs, and we uplift each of these sectors and each neighborhood. And I think that the way that we see this organizing happening is very similar to what the Network for Land and People Liberation is doing, which is a sort of capillary organizing that happens at the hyper-local level, but also recognizing that it needs to, the collaboration and the cooperation to interconnect needs to happen under an umbrella with the same values and the same principles. And there is a lot that we have done in our communities. I'm also part of the Solidarity Economy Principles Project. So as we know, the concept of cooperatives and worker cooperatives has also been co-opted by the private market and the capitalist market that utilizes cooperatives to continue to accumulate, and that is not working for the communities that need it the most in many cases. And so that is another task we need to do. We need to hold our movement accountable for how we are allocating resources to incubate cooperatives, to how are we following principles of cooperation, the 7 principles that, and one of my favorites is Principle 7, a concern for community? And is that really happening? Are we really asking around our communities about what they need to be able to create the worker cooperatives that we need to be able to have jobs and at the same time help us resolve the problems of feeding, housing, and creating. And I don't know y'all, but I am super ready for the new world. And I think that, we are going through such a terrible and difficult time right now, observing how the opposition gets more violent against the possibilities that we are creating to be able to gestate the new world. And so I think that the only thing that we have left is each other and this commitment to actually figure it out. What is the solidarity that we are going to create amongst ourselves that is not only symbolic, that is material, that actually moves money away from the enterprises that are harming our communities, because we are the ones that are creating that wealth. And so I encourage you to look at the different sectors and also figure it out how to move your money to credit unions, first of all. That's one of our broken records we have. And I encourage everyone to also check out what are the political education programs that CEANYC has. We have a Solidarity Economy 101 that is available for everyone who wants to learn and start thinking about this. But of course, it also depends on you getting a hold of knowledge of what is in your surrounding area. How much of the hyperlocal community are you part of? I don't know. In the Bronx, for example, I think the numbers are 75% of people work outside of the borough. I don't think that Brooklyn will have the same numbers, but those are the kinds of things that we need to start researching about and knowing how people are moving in terms of being able to make ends meet. And we are currently open. We currently are offering our cooperative leadership intensive that the applications are open until November 27. And this is I see some people that have been in that class, and I'm so happy to see you all. And we start in January and it goes to June. And this is specifically for people that are already in groups that are doing this kind of work, and it is to foster mutual aid among the different sectors in a class that lasts 6 months. And one of the project that came out of the last cohort of this year, 2025, is that people want to do more public education and cultural work. Taking from what David was saying, culture is really essential to the work that we're doing. Here in Brooklyn, Flatbush Mixtape, shout out to Flatbush Mixtape, that is doing a lot of cultural work, and a lot of artists that are figuring out how to be in the solidarity economy, because we get a lot of artists in New York wanting to be very famous artists, but I don't think that's gonna happen, y'all, I'm sorry. So we need a lot of labor that is related to creativity, a lot of creating materials, being educators that are accessible, but also that are involved in communities that are already doing this work or want to do it, because we get a lot of pushback about being anti-capitalist, because capitalism is all around us and has had huge victories. So I invite you to check us out. And we have this project, as I was saying, as a project of the cohort of this year. We're creating the Solidarity Economy Festival that is happening November 16 at Prime Produce Cooperative in Hell's Kitchen. It's on Sunday, 2 to 6. Come and check us out. It's organized with New York City Network of Worker Cooperatives. I see Sadaf in the back. And it's coordinated by the cleaning worker cooperatives mostly, that have also been having a really hard time because of their relationships with nonprofit incubators or cooperatives that fail worker cooperatives when they are trying to become autonomous and trying to be really bringing their knowledge after many, many years of being practitioners, and how that clashes with the model that is to be in an economy that doesn't really support autonomy and worker cooperatives. So, yeah, I think that's all I have for today, but we can keep chatting.
Great, go ahead.
I was so gratified with David, what he had to say relative to where the rubber really makes a difference when it hits the road. And that's not addressing some... Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better? So where the rubber hits the road is a critical thing that has to be identified. And I come from the 70s. We had co-ops, and that was in Minneapolis, where I'm coming from. And we had like 15 co-ops, right? And it was good. You know, we were all cheap students. We didn't have enough money. So we got our whole foods, whole grains, just buy it to local areas, basements of homes and things like this. But it got co-opted. And so that's what you have to be careful about. You can't just start economically, which is important, but you have to build a political movement. We don't have a third party in this country. I mean, that's unbelievable. I was involved with socialists.
To see if it's a comment or a question. Let us know.
Well, where is the next thing going now from the economic movement? What kind of support are you giving to candidates? Obviously, New York has come a long way. What's happening relative to a bona fide connection with a political party? And how are we educating this working class to that goal of a third party? You have a great facility here. Do we have education programs teaching some of the productive things that Marx, Engels, others had taught us? Rosa Luxemburg, there's a whole list of things. So how is that going? What's the direction of these committees for that?
Well, on behalf of Women Building Up, I don't even say it, just like I have so much, humility for like all of you sharing your thoughts. So I have a question for you, Camille, and actually maybe for any of you. So have you been able to, and I understand there's just so much like experimentation, and have you figured out a way to perhaps engage any of the women that are still on the inside as advisors or informers of your work? And then I also welcome anybody else if they know ways of engaging folks who are on the inside as well as folks that are in the community. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I can respond to both. So we have started a political education as part of our training. So I didn't mention, but we do a training, and then we do cooperative design, and then we do pre-launch, and then we do launch. So it's a very intensive program that we're doing. And political education, for the first time we introduced it, and I was so nervous, but I told the stories of Mondragon, and I told the story of Black Panther Party, which they were mostly familiar with, and told the story and doing it through stories, mostly in Chiapas. I told them like multiple liberation-based stories, and they actually were really receptive to the idea that we're not the only ones in the struggle. And I think it was actually the first time when they're like, oh, other people are in the struggle against forces that are just as dominant and trying to get rid of their language and trying to, and they love the Zapatista story. They love, so I did it through stories. We don't do it consistently, but I think we have like this one session, but we want to continue to expand that part of it because people were really engaged with it. And we also started with what are your needs and what is it that's hard about life? And they get to that same thing, like the man is holding us down. That's the story. That's the anti-capitalist story. We're being held down. We're busy all the time just to make ends meet. That's the story of of all of us, professionals, everyone, every class. We're just, everyone who's not the elite, we're just in a hustle just to make ends meet, just to be okay. So I do think that work is really critical. Our members, right now, our engagement with the inside is informal. Our members say that basically every woman in Illinois prisons know about VOLTS, Village of Leaders Thriving in Solidarity, which is our kind of the ecosystem that ties our housing and each of our worker co-ops together. So they say like that we're known as something that you can come out to on the outside. We haven't gone in yet. There's a lot when you're going in of politics. and work. But there's other groups that do, so that is something that's on the horizon. But it's informal. Apparently, even in the men's prisons now, they're starting to hear about what we're doing. So we're excited about that, and we're excited to make it formal at some point.
So I'm going to, Susan, for you, there is a fantastic website. I mean, I actually wanted to bring Camille because I wanted to continue to work with her, but there are two resources I want to make sure that y'all are aware of. One is called Break the Cycle Cooperative Hub.org. That's especially co-ops around formerly incarcerated people generally. The second is in California and the Sustainable Economies Law Center and Earth Equity. So if y'all are not connected there, I would be honored to help make that connection. I want to address, sir, your point. Like, we have to take people where they are. And I can tell you this, the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network has created a Solidarity Economy Candidate Questionnaire. And again, a lot of people think, oh, well, a 501c3 cannot engage at all in electoral politics. Actually, that's not true. You can do, am I right, Petula? Because of the work of the Democracy Beyond Elections, we can ask questions. We can host candidate forums. There's actually a lot that we can do. We cannot electioneer. So look, I've been to jail for justice, but they're not going to get me on a technicality. You know what I'm saying? So as a lawyer, I know where that line is, and I know how to walk that line. So we have a candidate questionnaire that you ask candidates for office about their position on worker-owned cooperatives, on community land trust, on public banks, on participatory budgeting, on universal basic income, on locally owned energy production and distribution models, democratizing the economy. We also have a series of questions. Kali and I are working on a 501c4 called Build and Fight to also ask questions around democratizing elections themselves, proportional representation, full publicly funded elections, felony re-enfranchisement, right? There's a whole series of things that we can do using ballot initiatives where we don't have to be dependent on a great candidate. Oh, I don't know, like, somebody say it. Thank you, right? There are great candidates we should absolutely be applauding, but I'm really more interested in engaging ordinary people in ballot initiatives using direct democracy at the ballot box, because to me, that's actually where the real excitement is.
And before we move on to another question, hopefully there are more. I want to say I appreciate your question, but there's some parts I got to push back on. And I'm doing that because I think a little bit further away. All right, there you go. There are third parties in the United States. There have been third parties in the United States. And it's been hard for them to break through in terms of engaging and capturing any kind of command and control over the instruments of governance in a society. And building a third party is more than just a notion. Now, in my view, we need a party that combines those of us in the solidarity economy sector with those of us who are organizing workers in the more informal sectors with those who are within the traditional trade unions. Think of what level of organization it would take to put just those three sectors together, particularly when you got the trade unions, which are fundamentally, historically, in the pocket of the Democratic Party. And fundamentally, at this particular juncture, their leadership is fracturing a bit around the Democratic Party, with some sectors now sucking up to the Republicans. But fundamentally, they're not planning on breaking, from that institution. Now, it helps to a degree, just being honest, that they're becoming largely irrelevant. Now, I'm not saying that, and I don't want folks to take that in the wrong way. But what I mean is, when you only represent at best 10% of the people who work, that means you've lost a bit of your leverage to claim that you're organizing or you represent the working class. So that means that there's some room for leverage and openness, but do we have the creativity to really want to engage the class in all of its multiracial, multi-gender, multidimensional complexity? Do we really want to do that? So far, let's be honest with each other, we have not wanted to do that. And I'm speaking in the generic sense of the so-called social movements that exist within the United States, because we have not broken out of the issue silos and the sectors to build a broader perspective that does not exist yet. Don't mean that certain people aren't calling for it, but we don't have a force that's prepared to do that. Now, the force that's got the greatest numbers to do that is like DSA on a national level. It hasn't made up its mind whether it's going to do a clean break, a dirty break, a break at all, right? So there's some real tangible issues. And I'm speaking to this from a direct experience. Now, I didn't speak about like the Jackson-Kush plan. And that was just because of time. But I've helped to win elections in 3 different cities that I've lived in, over the course of my 50-something years on this planet. Just because you win don't mean that you actually have the capacity to govern shit, number one. That's one thing that our movement has to be real about. And it also doesn't mean that those who you put there are clear about what their historic mission should be, because the movement isn't fundamentally clear oftentimes about what their mission should be. And one of the things I put out to anybody who I've ever supported, and now I'm even, if there's a point I'm going to be dogmatic about the rest of the time I got on this planet, it's going to definitely be this one, right? If I'm going to play any role, or any force that I'm related to that's going to play any role in engaging in electoral politics, particularly in this empire, you need to be very clear about what you are signing up for. And we are not putting you there, because remember, this is largely a system which predicates individuals. The individuals may have the letters of the Democrats or the Republicans, but the way the system is actually structured, the individuals is not actually accountable to the parties, right? This is not like the European democracy. This is a different creature that we have to deal with here. But the point being, if it's beyond your consciousness to recognize that what you are being asked to do is help mediate the contradictions of capitalism, then you're in the wrong place. We don't need to be dealing with you or engaging with you. Because when you get in that office, that's all you are basically signed up to do. And we need to understand that and come to grips with what that fundamentally means. And if we can't put candidates up there and put people in office who are prepared to run the contradictions to their logical conclusions, then we are wasting our own time. And understand what that means. That means you're not going to be liked. You probably won't win re-election, right? And that there are some very specific things that within the 2 years or 4 year cycle that you are called upon to engage, right, that you need to push. And I don't think, I'm bringing that up because I don't think we throw the notion out there, and I'm all for a third party. I've spent a lot of time trying to organize them in different forms. And I'm gonna spend probably a good chunk of my time still doing it, but with a deeper degree of clarity that I think that we need to really have, and I don't hear us having that conversation. We need to, but we are avoiding it, and I'm just pressing this out. Not that that's an answer, but we have been avoiding that in a lot of general senses. I don't mean that individually, I mean that collectively.
There's a word that's circulating tonight called contradictions, right? Which I think we need to lift up. So because Maria checked the previous person, I'm all about comments. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm only dropping comments. There ain't no real question, right? And Camille, I'm directing these at you. I appreciate everything that you've done. That work is incredible. And I like to acknowledge people doing good work publicly. But when you talked about contradictions and the struggle you're going through, and somebody like Colleen David know that I've refused to work for a not-for-profit organization. I do housing work because of the inherent contradictions. And for you to acknowledge that publicly, I think is huge. And it deserves applause, folks, because we do this work all the time. And sometimes we get programmed and, we wave a flag and say it's good work. But to understand that there are inherent contradictions in this work, I think is so important, and to put it forward and to talk about it publicly. A lot of times I get told, everybody knows you shouldn't be saying this publicly because it's going to, no, I can't tell the truth. That's a problem, right? So I appreciate you, sister. I appreciate the work that you've done at Shy Fresh, and continue to do it and understand that these contradictions are inherent and we have to figure it out. We have to figure out a different way to fund the movement, right? So there you go.
Thank you for bringing these perspectives to New York. I just want to know, how can people who are probably not going to be joining a union anytime soon or be building a co-op anytime soon, how can they be lending their hands or skills, and what skills are important to specific cases to advance a solidarity economy forward in concrete ways, so that we can show up to a physical place or log on to some website and do something that is actually contributing to advancing any part of this movement?
Great. Come along.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your insights with us. I have many reflections and thoughts inspired by you all. And my question is about digital technologies. You mentioned techno-feudalism and the deep transformations that we're having. The fourth industrial revolution of creating, seizing the means of productions was mentioned, but I'm very concerned about artificial intelligence and generative AI, especially as an educator, and in our political context, how that the knowledge implications of how people are receiving information and its challenge to political education and democracy, even on a small scale, not just in electoral politics. And I know that there's some initiatives, including by people in the room, May 1st technologies, all of these different technological ways of taking more control and being more democratic. But I think that there is I'm wondering what you all think about the role of technology in the solidarity economy. Does it fit into that wheel of, value chains, or is it something separate, like the political angle? Sorry, I'm being brief, but I'm just puzzled, and I hope that you guys can shed some light. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, thank you, everyone. My question is in relation to David's point about they're not going to hand us the key, and kind of the contradictions that you were raising, Camille, about funding and so forth, and J.P. Morgan and the government and so forth. What the relationship between those facts and those contradictions, and our, how we engage the state, and what our theory of the state is, kind of, and you know what I'm saying. So that's my question.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Those are the three.
Those are the three. Go have at it, people.
I'm going to do it like this, because I want to say to the very first question, the CEANYC, if I were in New York City, CEANYC is where I would go. So I want to be the one to say that. So that you don't.
Yeah, I think that we are an umbrella, and we do try to build a network. I think that if you want to really bring programming into your organizing with community gardens, with cooperative housing, there is a lot of potential there to actually do work immediately, because the need is huge for people to have people to come in that have organizing skills, that have accounting skills, that have all kinds of skills to help processes and to create governance. And I think that it is a missed opportunity when people go to places and only think that they will be volunteers in a simple way. I think there is a lot more to develop there, to consider those spaces as third spaces where you are doing economic organizing, environmental justice, food sovereignty, and always bringing that into every space, because that's the networking that I think we have to do. So always thinking about the connections that can be between community gardens, ACSCs, and we have a lot of broken records about this, how in a neighborhood you can find around you a whole ecosystem that is there, ready to be connected, but also preparing people to see that as economic activity and not only socializing or economic or community organizing, right? It's something that will create relationships that will help us to think together about the solutions that we are looking for. So I think our website is CEANYC.org, CEANYC.org. Cooperative Economics Alliance of New York, yeah. I can answer about the technology, Patty. So I have been thinking about this a lot because I think technology has a huge role in what we're trying to do. And looking at the experiences in Argentina, Ecuador, and Brazil with delivery workers, I think there is a lot of space that we can learn from initiatives that are fighting the technological boss that all these delivery that are actually enormous amount of people working in the service industry that enter that industry through this new level of service that is deliveries, and the logistics of cities of entire humongous metropolis need this work of delivery, right? And I think that people are actually working on technologies that help that kind of labor force is an example that I have where there is a lot of potential to actually create a more just, more equity in the kinds of labor that is available online and who has access. And I think that that's something that we could leverage from in the solidarity economy. And I will look at Brazil, again, Brazil, Argentina, Ecuador have really large projects on how they are organizing with that.
Great. Okay, folks, can I make a recommendation? We have very little time. Could everyone go just maybe 1 minute each?
Yeah, that's great.
We really just need to wrap there.
So one of the biggest hurdles we have is that the people with the skills aren't aligned. If there are aligned people with the skills, we want you. We want you on a couple of conditions. One, that you know what your commitment is in advance. The number of excited people that come in and disappear just as quickly means that we use our limited energy to manage your fancies. Not what we want. We want committed people to know what they have capacity for the long run, not for I'm out of a job. But then you're going to get a job. And are you going to disappear, right? What capacity do you have to give long term? And two, that you are working with people, not for people, and you're doing your journey the entire time. You're working on your journey of working with people, right? People who have less social capital than you, and you have no superiority. You are working on your superiority complex, all versions of your superiority complex, right? All of those are away, and you see every human as equal to yourself. You're working on that journey, and you're working on your commitment, and we want you. We want you in our work every day, all day long. There's so much to do. So those are the kind of conditions that I have for it.
Awesome.
So I'm going to direct my 1 minute directly to my comrade, my friend, Michael Nugent. Michael, I think you know that I am committed to dual power versus governance or even co-governance. I do not think that they are inherently contradictory, but one is better than the other, right? And by dual power, if folks are not familiar with this concept, it is not merely to govern differently using the elected means of I don't want to just get my hands on these levers of power. I want to smash this system and recreate how we are actually doing economics themselves, right? So dual power is a concept that only emerges during truly revolutionary times like we're in now. Just to be clear, whether we like it or not, things are being transformed. This is a Gramscian conjuncture, the likes of which no humans have ever seen. As a Marxist, I'm here to tell you, if you're being dogmatic as a Marxist now, you're doing it wrong. We have to engage this dialectic. And by that, Michael, what I'm saying is my commitment and my challenge to all of us is to think about the state differently. We should not think about, we either wait till we take control of the state or we try to work within the state, we have to, from the bottom up, begin to create the kind of dynamics that both Camille, Maria, and Kali, I heard repeatedly talk about. This is something different. This is the kind of transformational, revolutionary moment that we're in. And if we think about the state in that respect, then we're onto something. And I'd love to continue this conversation with you.
Great.
So, in my time, let me try to tackle two things. Didn't catch your name. AI itself is not the problem. It's the class problem. It's not a technological problem, right? The fact that the bourgeoisie own and control it, they're going to dictate what it does and who it serves. But in and of itself, we could program it and use it for something totally different if we put the time, energy, and resources into it and be prepared to fight for its engagement. I'm encouraging us to do that. I think it's a core part of what we have to face, and it could help enable, if it's put in the hands of the people and democratically owned and governed, then it can make some major strides. I'm sorry I did a poor job of self-promotion, but you were asking about it being incorporated into our program. It is a fundamental part of it's a fundamental part of the Build and Fight formula that we put out as an extension of those pieces. So folks can take that and use that as you desire. And the last thing, just about the state, put the state in the context of the mode of production that it's in. Like, we are in the capitalist mode of production. So the state serves that particular entity. And until we get clear on how we want to deal with overthrowing capitalism, the question of the state is always going to be subservient to it. Fascism, social democracy, all these different things are different variants of how the bourgeoisie is willing in a particular place and time to extract, the resources that it needs. When the working class is strong, they're willing to give some concessions towards social democracy. When the working class is weak and impose all the brutality they want on us, we call that fascism. The working class is weak, we get what we are deserving right now because of our weakness. I'm just being real and frank. So let's have a deeper conversation about what type of movement we need to build, and then understand how we want to relate to the state once we get to that point.
All right, everybody. So everyone, let's please give another round of applause for the whole panel. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights and experiences.